Hello, everybody. It was Charles Dickens that once said, "It's the best of times and it's the worst of times." I can't think of a better way to describe an incredible day that happened in my life nearly 40 years ago now. I want to invite you to come and go with me as I relive an incredible day, a day of anticipation, a day of fear, and a day of jubilation that I can remember. It all started at 4 o'clock on a Monday morning, and it was the opening day of spring turkey season in Missouri. Oh, my dad and I had been anticipating this day for several days now. We loved to turkey hunt. We had been turkey hunting for nearly 2 years, but we had never killed a turkey yet. But today held high expectations. As that alarm clock went off, and although my head was arguing with my pillow, I jumped out of bed and I ran and got my dad up, said, "Dad, it's time to get up. Let's go." And so we got dressed and we jumped in the car and we headed down to the corner cafe where we met with a bunch of other guys that morning. They all liked to gather in a corner booth and we see who could tell the biggest stories or the biggest lies. And what a time that was. But as the sun began to get ready to start coming up, we headed out the door, paid our bill, and headed towards the river bottoms north of Jasper. As we got out there, I opened the gate and we drove the truck down through this long, bumpy road, and we finally parked by an old abandoned farmhouse. And I got out and I got all my camouflage on, and back in the distance I could hear a little bit of thunder, but it didn't bother me any. I mean, we're going to turkey hunt. What's a little rain going to matter? And so we headed down the hill and we walked along, and finally we got to the end of this logging road where I was going to set up my stand. And my dad walked on down along the ridge and around the corner of the bend of Muddy Creek where he was going to set at the mouth of Muddy Creek and the mouth of Pettis Creek. I set up my stand and quickly put it on my camouflage and put on my head net and got my turkey calls and got my gun ready. And by that time, back behind me, I could hear the rain begin to fall on the leaves in the trees. No big deal. It's not going to hurt a turkey hunter like me. So I sat there and I waited, and as closer it got to dawn, the more the sky began to lighten up. It would flash here and it would flash there, and then the rain started coming a little bit harder and a little bit harder and a little bit harder. And the wind began to blow, and as it got closer, the wind was blowing harder and harder, and the trees would fall down this way, and then they'd beat the ground this way, and the storm was getting very, very violent. And I sat there and was wondering what I'm going to do, and about that time there was a kaboom! And lightning struck the ground about 75 yards in front of me. With that, I was terrified, and I jumped up. I wasn't sure where Dad was, and I wasn't sure what he was going to do, but I knew I was headed for the truck. And as I jumped up and ran, I could see the outline in the flashes of lightning of him running around the field together, and he joined me, and off we ran like Forrest Gump would run, all the way to the truck. And we got there, and we were panting like lizards, and we didn't say anything for a little while. But finally we both agreed that no matter what, we would never, ever hunt in a lightning storm again. It was terrifying. And our hopes for turkey hunting that morning had kind of dissipated. But about that time, it began to stop raining. The rain slowed down and you could see the storm was moving off, and I looked at him and he looked at me, and immediately we both thought, it's over. We might as well go back. So we took off back down that logging road, and just as we got to the field, and we set up, and I began to call turkey to yup, 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 and a gobble immediately came back. And it wasn't just a few minutes that a turkey emerged out of the timber and came out into that field and began working his way towards us. And what seemed like just a matter of minutes, that turkey came up and he got within range, and I got my gun ready, and kaboom! We had our very first turkey in our life. What a day that was. What an incredible memory I have. A day of total fear. I've never been more scared in a storm in my life. But I've never been more jubilant than I was when we got that first turkey, my dad and I together. We learned not to mess with the fury of nature, but we learned how God can bless us when you trust Him and enjoy His creation together. That's my story. Thank you.